Hello, everybody. Welcome to the presentation, taking you on a journey on what we've done with Sitecore. So what actually happens, we were long-time Sitecore implementers, but then XM Cloud came and sales were very happy to sell it. So they went to a customer of ours and they say, you want to buy XM Cloud? I say, yeah, sure. And then they said, we sold XM Cloud and now you have to deal with it. And that was fun, but not always, I have to say. But this journey takes us on the decisions that we had to make and what we did and the challenges that we need to do. So, but we wanted to keep it a little bit simple. My name is Frank. I'm CTO at Uxby, former Sitecore employee. So I know a little bit about Sitecore. This is my colleague, Jeroen. I still know him from my time with Sitecore. Now we're working together in the same company. He's a 10 times MVP. I love whiskey. He likes to bike. So we're not always on the same road, but we always come together. Uxby, we only do Sitecore. So nothing else. This is our primary focus and our customers are pretty happy. And one thing that we find really important is the end users that work with the product needs to be happy, because if they are not happy, they're not going to use it. And then you have a bad implementation. So we always work with that part in mind. So this was our challenge, because the customer that we started to work for, they had Sitecore SXA, they had multiple sites, they had multiple brandings, they had multiple applications, and we got XM Cloud. And that didn't align very well, because out of the box, we get all these. So we had to make a decision. You all know this picture. And we had to make a decision on what we're going to use. So these are the things that we're using currently with that customer. But you see, we don't use the deploy app at this moment. So we went to CLI because there was another thing. We needed to host in Azure. They have their own Azure subscription. The guys from Vercel are here. But we didn't, we talked to them already. Hey, how can we get the customer there? What is the benefit? But still customers do have Azure and they want to host on their own subscription. So the deploy app at that time, there was no integration with Azure yet. We had to do it. We had to build it ourselves. So we did it with the Sitecore CLI. Pages, also important to use. When we started out, we were XP developers, so we worked on the experience editor. And then you started deploying it and using pages, and that didn't work well at all. So local pages connected to your local pages, to your local environment. Make sure you already work 100% with Sitecore pages, because that will make the challenge. Now it's very easy to set it up. But you have to understand that you're locally. But we just heard from Liz that we can point pages somewhere in the future to your own environment, which will be very, very handy and will be less of a hassle on how you do it now. Sitecore search, we're not going to talk about that one, but every website needs a search, so we're going to implement the search. We're doing that at the moment. So I'm not going to tell a lot about that one, but there are much more good sessions about implementing search in this strategy. So development. So what's the first thing that you need to do? You need to set up shop. You need to start working on your environment. You need to set up whatever you like. You need to bring on other developers on board. You need to have everything in place. So there is a great starting point for that. Everybody knows this already, this starting point, the headless foundation. You take it, you start it, you run it, and then it works. Sort of. Not always. So there are issues, there are bumps. We looked at it and we thought, okay, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So there is an up, and that does a pull of everything. So it pulls every time it pulls the new foundation. Well, we don't want that because it might take a long time or you don't have the time for it. So we started creating our own PowerShell scripts. So we have now I think around like 50 PowerShell scripts that we can use, and there are only like 4 or 5 commands that we use on a regular basis. We do an authentication with one command. That's what really works. We do a Sitecore pull, a push, that kind of stuff through that thing. Docker compose down, Docker compose up. And I will come to something later that we also doing, but that's another thing. So what do you get out of the box when Sitecore Sales is bringing your Sitecore environment, is selling it? And this is a small subscription. You have 2 Sitecore projects, which is quite nice. And a Sitecore project, I have another slide later what defines as a project, but you have one organization. So when Sitecore buys, sells something to you, you get a tenant. Let's say that's the organization, the client company. Inside there is a project. And inside there are environments like dev, QA, and prod. And the dev environments, QA, and prod, basically that's your XM environment. The other things are there. But they are strict. They are not tied together. So you cannot share content between projects, okay? So you can only, if one site is in one project, you cannot use the content in the other one, or you need to build some customization around that one. So that's what we needed to do as well. We needed to share content. So having 2 or more projects was basically not going to happen for us at this time. So we had to push everything inside of one project. We have multiple developers. We have only one dev environment, so not many. So where are you connecting to? So with the starter kit, you get also an XM environment on Docker. So anybody work with Docker already? Some like it, some hate it. I really like Docker. Why? Because I don't understand it, but I know how to work with it, and I learned to love it. And because of that is I don't have any hassle with anything outside of my local computer, because I really love my local computer. Nobody, no offenses, no anything out of us. It's my world. It's not anybody else's world. It's my world. So local, and this is a big discussion going on. Bart Plasmeyer, he really likes all the developers to work on a centralized environment. If that would be possible, it would be nice, because then I can have one environment outside and then just my code. But if you have multiple developers and they all have their own branches and they all have their own code, but your items are changing, what happens to your code that depend on those items? Crash. What if you do a Sitecore pull on your environment? You get all kinds of, you get all items that you didn't work on. So you need to be very specific in the project naming what you're going to pull. I'm lazy. I don't want to think about that. I just want to do everything on my local machine. So this is why I took Docker there. And we started up the Docker, and that was all good. Now, this is what you get out of the box with Docker. You get traffic, you get CM, you get your rendering engine, you get your Solar, you get your SQL. This is what you have. And there's also a representation on disk on that. Traffic with your SSL certificates that are going to be rendered. There's a deploy folder that's connected to your CM. There's your SXA starter. There's your SQL and your data Solar. All good, all fun. But the rendering server, that means my NPM runs in a rendering service on my local disk. It's consuming all kinds of resources that I don't want to have. Then there's traffic. Who loves traffic? Nobody loves traffic. Everybody hates traffic. So what did we do? We removed traffic and we added NGX. Why did I add NGX? Because on the NGX, I could go directly to my Sitecore environment. And then, and because I still have the SSL certificates, I connected the SSL certificates to my NGX, which is all fun and games. And then the rendering engine took it out because I got the code already on my disk. I can do npm run. But there's a trick there, because if you remove all this, then the rendering, like pages, depends on rendering 3000. You have to bring that back in your CM server. And every time that you start Docker, that thing gets a different IP address. So I took this thing, I took a PowerShell script, and then replaced the entry point in Docker, and then pointed to the XM Cloud development, the original one. And then every time that this thing starts up, we just put the internal file to the rendering. So basically my local host. So I update always the etc file. This means that my container always knows what IP address everything else is running on. So my local environment is running on. So this is really handy for us, so that we could deprecate traffic and the rendering engine. Then what we like to do is we introduced atomic design. So with atomic design, because we had multiple branding and everything, so we started out building small. And this is now what you can do with XM Cloud. You used to have all kinds of issues with, well, not all kinds of issues, but you were aware if you had a placeholder and you put a rendering on top of there, it took time. And if you took too many renderings on one page, it's going to affect the speed of your page. Now it's easier to put smaller components. So this is what we also put into practice. We made everything smaller components, like a title, a rich text, whatever, like Sitecore also does, and you can just put them on the page. No hassle about that one, but you need to define it. And we took Tailwind to do this. And then I think this is, yeah, so we set up the branding in Tailwind. And Tailwind comes with variants and stuff like that. So the variants are very important, because you can set the variants and override them per style sheet. Basically what we got, and I haven't come to that yet, but we had a multi-application. So we had a single SXA, the SXA starter. We removed that one from disk and we brought something else in called Turbo. And then we could have multiple applications. But we have one branding section. And because we split everything up in very small style sheets, and with the overrides, we could do this and then apply branding to each and every application. So to a application, but also to a shared site. And then, Nextjs. We started working with Nextjs, but I'm an MVC developer. I don't know shit about Nextjs. So how did we handle that? Okay. If you don't know it, you have to hire it. You get people that know Nextjs. We hire the people that know Nextjs. So we took them in, but they didn't know Sitecore. So we needed to help them out. But we needed to give them something where they could work in, so we were not stalled. So what we brought in Storybook. And they could build their components inside of Storybooks. But we took this, the components out and we put them in Turbo. And not the stories, the components, and we installed them on multiple applications. So that means that we could reuse the code. Now, instead of a standard Nextjs app, there's only one components folder. And if you want to reuse it, you need to copy it to your other solution. So that it's a little bit, it's not reusability. So now this is what we have done. The good thing is about Storybook, once you have Storybook, you take Chromatic, you publish it to Chromatic, and then you can review it with the team. So with anything else that we could do, or what we did, is we just have those front-end developers work completely in Storybook, and they can build everything. They don't know about Sitecore. A little bit, because we give them the data structure. We made a mocking platform where we could mock the data into Storybook. So they have the authorized 5 minutes. They have the other things. So this is where you see the mocking data. And there is another pipeline that we just created. So all the front-end developers can now, with any hassle, kick off the Chromatic pipeline, and they can call the product owner or the designer, and they can go ahead and go in there. This is almost my final slide. So there's the XM Cloud subscription. This is also a slide that you probably know from Sitecore. And this is where we had the biggest challenge, because we could have an environment. We could have one site, we could have two sites in one environment, but we couldn't have multiple applications. And the answer to the multiple applications and the reusability of this is adding a mono repo to your solution. And this is the mono repo, which we use Turbo for. And Turbo is from Vercel, so it should be right in the alley of Sitecore. And we have Nextjs, and we have a portal website. And here you see the shared components. What we're planning to do in the future is doing an integration in Figma and just do the Tailwind CSS and make all the changes there. This is what we've done so far, and this is the development architecture that we need to do. And now Jeroen is going to tell you something about the software architecture on how to work with it. There you go, Jeroen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. First, I have a question. Are there front-end developers? Real front-end developers? Ooh, then I have to be careful. Are there Sitecore developers? Okay, we are. So I'm a Sitecore developer, and I had to make, and I call it going to the other side. And long time ago, I found this on the internet, and those are pain points of JavaScript. And on the top is the architecture. So, and that's also what I saw. So, for instance, I call it cut and paste inheritance. It's normally in front end. So I'm building a component, I have something, and you want it, just copy and paste it in. So, and that works, but it's not the way I want it to work. So with the team, we sat down and say, okay, let's draw what we want. So we have something, GTTOS, going to the other side, and we have two applications, Storybook, website, doesn't matter how we call it. And we have, right now I will call it libraries. We have a library for the UI, utils, and the Storybook Sitecore. That's our mocking system. And Storybook will be using the UI core. We can point, yeah. And the mocking framework, so that our developers, front-end developers can work on it and test it. And when everything is okay, the website will also be using that. So we not duplicate code, we're sharing code. That's what we want. And you can see here the website is using utilities, but also the Storybook. We not come and copy utilities to the website and to Storybook. That's what we want. If you're doing the, I call it always next finish, but if you do the template from Sitecore, the starter kit, then you get one Nextjs application. So every red rectangle is an application. So I am involved in another project that has one website and two portals. So, and what you do is you say, okay, I'm working on this website. I have to do some analytics because we're not using the analytics from Sitecore, but we're using Piwik. So we have to do something. There's a component folder, so every component will be in there. We have the CSP headers, so the cores, we want to do something with it, utils, and the configuration. And then the other developer will start with this one and say, okay, I will copy over the analytics, the components, but the utils, but I have security and also the config. I will copy that one. And then the next one, you will create it and you will copy it over. And then you say, yeah, but the CSP header, and also I have to mention every silo is in repository, yeah, in DevOps. It's in different repository. So we say, okay, we have a CSP header and we create a separate repository for that, but because we want to use that in all the silos. And as you can see, so when you're building here and saying, oh, I'm missing something, you have to switch over to another repository, do some stuff. You need an application to test it. Then you create a pull request Then you start the pipeline, you go and do the test, do the acceptance, do the production, get a version number and say, okay, I'm back. So that's a little bit hard. And also here you can see we forgot to remove it here. So now we have a new version and the website says, oh, it doesn't work. And then you have troubles. So this, and they call it, when you have separate repositories, they call it a polo repo. So we switch over to a mono repo. Is that, does somebody already use a mono repo, or you say, I've never heard of it? Yeah, okay. So first step we did was just on file level, split up the code. And you can see here, we created, this is our repository. Now we have one repository and we have two folders, one called app and the other called packages. I will come to that later. It's a kind of convention and we stick with the convention from NPM. But in the future, if you want to say, I want to use Helix, you can also create project, foundation or feature. And we say, okay, in the apps we have website, we have a customer portal, business portal and storybook, and all the other stuff we create separate folders of that. So the red one are in this repository, also the green one, but the green one are config folders or pack. Now we call it packages. I'm switched over to libraries, then we call it packages. Because if you create packages, not applications, you have to do settings. Because when you build, it's a little bit different build than an application, Nextjs application. There are different in settings. So if you copy them over in every package and you say, it wasn't that great, we changed, you have to do it in every package. And now you have it on one place. So that's the thing. And the yellow ones, that's a step what we are working on. For instance, our mocking platform, it's finished. So we took it out and it was moved to another repository and it's now on our private NPM server. So if you have, we are building a kind of platform that we can use for multiple customers. So when something is finished, it will be moving out and it will run on its own. So we have the compiled version, but not the source code anymore. So so we split everything up. So if you're in the website and you say, okay, I'm in a component and I want to use something from the security, you have to do in the top import some class from packages, security, and then what you want. So that's not nice because if we change something, you have to go to all the files to change that. So what we want is that we just say in the import, give me the security. So we thought how we gonna do that. So the next step is NPM has workspaces. So you can create workspaces and workspaces solve that problem. It creates the dependencies so that we can use not the relative path, but the name. And that's very nice because if we create a separate package on a private server, the name will stay the same, only the version. So that will be nice. So what's a workspace? It's a generic term that refers to a set of features in the NPM CLI that provides support to manage multiple packages from your local file system from within a singular top-level root package. So we created one root level, right? And then we created apps and we created the packages. On that level, we have to create a package.json file. And see the package.json file as a project file, right? So it's, but this is on a high level. So normally in all the packages, I sometimes refer to it as a project file, but on root level, it's the solution file. It's not the same, but just to make it a little bit easier. So we have the package file, and it's a less filled file than for the packages, but it has here some extra workspace definitions. And you can see here, workspaces, it's the folder apps and the packages, and everything beneath that, every folder beneath that folder that contains a package.json file will be a workspace. And what that does is, on the top level, you can now do npm install, and all the packages will be installed on root level. So you have now only one node module folder on root level, not on package level. So that a lot of, because if every package has its own node module folder, your disk drive is very full, right? It's about 2 or 3 gigabytes. And very important, it has only now one package log file on root level. And what's the package log file? Yeah, I say it's like Google Maps. It contains everything. So also the path. So if I say, oh, I want now security, it says, okay, it's there and it's that version. So don't delete that one. So step back. We created new folders, split up the code. Now we can, with workspaces, easily set the dependencies. And the thing is, when you want to build, I can switch. It's a lot of work because now you have to make a PowerShell script that goes to every folder and say, okay, npm run dev or run build or whatever script you want. So that's a lot of work. So we thought and looked, what we need glue between everything now. We have it in place and glue, and that's what Frank already told. That's Turbo Repo. And Turbo Repo is a high-performance build system for JavaScript and TypeScript code bases. So on root level, you globally install Turbo, and that's very easy. npm install -g Turbo, and you wait, and then it's installed. And that's, I don't know exactly, but you can give it a command, and then it will create the turbo.json file, and that contains the basic settings. So for now, we only scratching the surface of Turbo. So we only use right now pipelines, and that are not DevOps pipelines, but there's a pipeline build here. So when I type in Turbo build, Turbo will look in every workspace, in every package.json file, if there is a script called build. If that's the case, it will run that build. It can do it after each other or parallel. So it's, if you do it side by side, it's very quick. And so when we want to develop, and I want to develop on the website, I type in Turbo Dev. But if you type in Turbo Dev, every application with Dev will be started. So that's not a big problem, but yeah, I'm only working on the website, right? So that's a little bit overhead. So you can filter out. You can say -- filter website. So you say to Turbo, I only want to run that website. The dependencies are there. So it will also start up all the packages. The only thing is, when you change something in the website and you press save, you get a hot reload. That's very nice. But not for the packages, because they are not in that application. So somebody has seen it, but it's a little bit, you have to suffix it with 3 dots. That means start everything up, including all the references. So what happened is, if you change something, it will compile this file, this package, and do a reload. So it's that thing, that logo right corner will be running, and then it will be updated. Also, for the portal, you see, the portal will be a little bit quicker because it doesn't have that much packages. So that's easy. You can run them side by side. That's no problem. The only thing, you have to have a unique port number. So if you have 3000, that has to be 3001. And you can see here in the mono repo, you have all the packages, but yeah, you don't have to use them all. So that works very fine. So another thing that Turbo has is caching. So everybody knows you start out, it's very quick, and then it will be bigger, and it will take some time to build. it's terrible. So what happened is Turbo will have standard local caching. So we have 3 developers. When I run, and I didn't everything, but you can see, the build is successful, but the cache is 0. And it took 9 seconds. When I run this again locally, it will be milliseconds because everything is already built. You change nothing. So it's fast. But Frank, that's working here, no, because you can't, it has its own local cache. So locally, when you're working, it's working totally fine, but you can share the cache here. But there's also an option for shared cache. And that's very interesting because you can share the cache. So you have to log into Vercel and you're, I don't know what it sent there, but something. And it's very intelligent. So I come in, I always start early, Frank a little bit later. So I'm starting, I'm building, and Frank comes in and totally different project. I'm the portal, he's the website, but we're using security. Security comes from the cache, doesn't have to build. And you can do the same on your CI machine. So the builds are very quick. The builds are very quick with us, but only we generate all the pages. So that will take some time. So it still takes some time, but building is very fast. There's one downside. The local is free. Here, this costs money. So I don't know how much, but yeah, you can make the calculation. So that's one feature I very like from Turbo. It's very fast. Okay, so as Frank mentioned, our customer says, Vercel is not going to happen. We have Azure, we have DevOps, and that's it. Deal with it. So we had to do it ourselves. Also, from Sitecore has the deployment app, and the deployment says, and Vercel also, and say, okay, we want to connect to your repository. It's not going to happen. So that's the thing we have. So we build manually, we deploy it to Azure and to Nextjs Cloud, because you have to deploy twice. You deploy it to your app, could be Vercel, but with us it's Azure, and you have to deploy it to Nextjs Cloud for the rendering host. So, and Turbo has a nice feature. Oh, sorry. Those are the options you can choose. And that's pruning. So that's a very interesting thing. So what happened is, so for instance, I will take Portal. Portal doesn't use many packages, right? This is more. So what happened is on our build pipeline, so you can do it locally, but doesn't make sense. On your build pipeline, we say, okay, Turbo, prune this application. What happened out of the box is that an out folder will be created, and the source code from all those packages will be copied in there. And also the package.json files. But the package log file is custom. It only contains what we have here. So what happened is on the build server, when the prune is finished, we say npm install. Because of the server, we don't have the packages, but only the packages needed for this build will be downloaded, not for the whole mono repo, because that will take some time. And then you can build. And we build a real standalone application. So we don't do npm build production or something out of the box. And you can do it, you can create a setting in the config file of Nextjs. Then in the .nex folder, you get a separate folder standalone. And that's a really standalone application. So I can take that, create a zip file of it, and send it to Azure, and Azure can run it from within the zip file. We don't do that, but technically it's possible. The only thing is it's not working out of the box. You have to do some steps, but it's some time ago that I did it, so I forgot what to do. But I will blog about it. I know the public folder, you have to copy it in this in another folder, because otherwise you don't have the style sheets or whatever. So, but this is a really safer for us. So we have also, it's very small. We use tree shaking. Everybody knows tree shaking. So it's like a tree you shake and the leaves will fall that you don't need, and what you need will stay on the tree. So that's my interpretation. So what happened is, after all, if you do a monorepo and you build, all those code here will be gone with tree shaking. Only downloading it is totally not necessary, right? So that's why we prune. So it will be very small, the footprint, and also when you have errors, you don't see them in the console. So they will be saying, oh, there's an error, but there is no error. So you're not gonna say, oh, I can fetch something from here. It's only saying, oh, there's an error. And so what we have is a good logging system. So if something goes wrong, we log it, and there we can see it. But and in development you see everything, but on production you don't see almost no real errors. So that's also very nice when you do a total standalone version. That's when we deploy it to Azure or Vercel. Well, because I already here with Vercel, you can build it your own and send it to Vercel. I like that version better because it's very strange when you look 3 years ago and say to somebody, oh, give me the key to your repository and the code. I will build it for you. And everybody say, yeah, we're not going to do it. And now give the code and we build it because we can do it better. Okay. But so we want to do it self. With Sitecore, that's no option. So, but we cannot connect to a repository. So we use the cloud xmcloud.build.json file, and it's in the root where you deploy it, and you deploy it with the Sitecore CLI. And it contains deployment items, so the serialized items. So there are two things I'm not good at. That's certificates and serializing items. So I've always struggled with that. But what happened is everything here will be compiled to a resource file, one resource file, and put on xmcloud. But I created here the rendering host. I created 2 hosts. Out of the box, you get 1. But we have 2 hosts we want to do because they are totally different. But you can see here, it's pointing to the head folder. It's pointing to the same folder because we have a mono repo. And that's a little bit of a problem with Sitecore because Sitecore thinks that you have everything in one application and that you don't use Turbo. And that's not right because we're using Turbo. So as you can see here, we tweaked a little bit. So you have 3 commands: start command, build command, and run command. And don't ask me what's the difference between start and run, because I don't know. But the build, everybody can remember what build is, right? So we say start portal and build portal and run the portal, and we say start the website. So, and what happened is that when you're so those scripts, because you say start that script, right? It has to be on the package.json in root level. So solution file, if I can say. So I'm going to show that to you. So it's a little bit big. So I open the scripts. So we have a lot of scripts also to clean everything. So clean everything. Everything will be cleaned. Sometimes you want that because of the versioning of the package. That works so fine. But you can see here. Let me see here. So we have here DevOps Turbo. Here we can install Turbo. We do some steps. We say run or build, and then we install Turbo, and that works fine. And you can say here Turbo start, filter, and that's the line I already showed you. And yeah, after that you can start it in serial, and then it will be running it will be running on the Sitecore part. So yeah, so resume. We didn't want just one application or 3 applications where we copy everything and then we don't have control. We created a file structure, and every folder was a project or a package or a library, how do you call it? But to get nice, not using the references, because that don't go that way. We use workspaces, so we can say, because workspaces also create symlinks, so you can easily point to the correct source code, works out of the box. And we use Turbo to combine everything together. So, and that works very fine, very good. And just one other thing, Frank already mentioned it, and I call it, we create one single point of control. So, out of the box you have up and down, but if you want to serialize, what's not my biggest thing, is that you have to say, oh, you have to log in. Then you have to do .NET, Sitecore, authenticate, or whatever. What we do is just say XM Cloud CLI authenticate, and then it's ready. Docker doesn't work. So we have front-enders that sometimes they need Docker and say, that doesn't work. We have Docker fixed. It will be fixed. We have sometimes Node.js will do some strange things. Kill all Node.js servers on your machine. Yeah. So we have everything here. It's a snapshot. I think we have more, but also project in it. We're creating the correct URLs. So it's not localhost colon 3000, but it's a real URL with a real certificates, because we use, for instance, B2C to log in, and it's a third party. And then we say, yeah, the return URL will be localhost colon 3000. And they say, no, it's not going to happen. That's no. So that's the reason why we did it. So what we now have is a very stable platform where if there's a new project or a new library, we can easily create it or share it, even share it between different projects. So between application, between different projects, without having duplicate code. So that's one of the things that's very important for me. It's almost time, so I will stop. But I'm very keen on maintainable code. So a lot of times you hear, yeah, we do a lift and shift. So we take it, we make it work in XM Cloud. Okay. So, and then the people from maintenance, they aren't happy. It's not happy to work with a lift and shift application, right? So create maintainable code. And this is our first step. We have multiple steps, but we're only 45 minutes. But this is the first layer we have. And then, yeah, we have a lot of nice other things. But if there are questions, do we have time? Yeah. If there are questions? How you make components? Yeah, so you make the components in the storage book, right? And how do you make that? So Sitecore page. Oh, yeah, well, what we right now we don't use bring your own code right now to do that, but we have blocked Sitecore, so it's actually the same. It's only in not in the edit mode, but in the view. So how the component is viewed on the website, not in edit mode, because that looks different. So, for instance, when you have video component, you can do, and what we do is then say, okay, we have mock data, so title, and it's a video, and it's this code, and then within the fields, or it takes a GraphQL query, because that is empty, and then we return always, we know what to return, it, and then it will think, component will think, that's the cycle context that it gets, and then react. So what we build is a kind of provider around the generation of the component in story. And you can do everything with it. So basically what we do is say we build the data
basically just reading the properties and giving the standard properties of Sitecore back. So it's nice and it works, and the front enders can really work really fast. The only thing is that you need to deliver them the data structure beforehand. So that's way. But basically, what I'm doing now is the front enders that we hired. I'm also putting them. They need to have a Windows machine, and they run in Docker, and this is why we have the scripts. But they started building their own templates in Sitecore as well, because it's fairly easy to do for them. Once they understand, you just take your bloody hand and you do it 1, 2, 3 times with them, and then they say, "Leave me alone, I can do it myself," because it's easy. And then they can build, and then we will give them post, and they create their own graph, very push it, done.